Hi, my name is Job, and I'm a therapist that specializes in infidelity and trauma, and I lead groups at the EMS Weekends. Today I want to talk about shame. I think shame is one of those things that if we can't figure out shame, I think it makes it really hard to recover from infidelity. Shame in my own story was so tricky. I would go into therapy and we would talk about these cycles my wife and I would go into, and my therapist would talk to me and say, Job, I think you're experiencing shame. And I guess I had this core belief that shame was like, I want to crawl into a ditch and die because I feel like I'm worthless. So shame, I didn't really relate to shame because I always thought like I did what I wanted. I didn't really care about consequences or other people, and I don't want to crawl into a ditch. And I feel like I am perfectly fine how I am, and I just made a mistake. It really started making me interested in shame, because obviously he was seeing something that I wasn't. So I spent probably a good 2 years reading anything I could about shame and just trying to understand what shame is. And that period of my life was very eye-opening. Essentially, shame is this overwhelming feeling that we can't tolerate this present circumstance or situation because in some sense, we don't feel like we are acceptable. And I'm going to pull this apart because shame manifests in really different ways. If you want something really good to go look into, Brene Brown, Kurt Thompson, they have a lot of good information about shame. Research indicates that shame could be one of the most negatively overwhelming emotions a human can experience. It overwhelms our nervous system. It causes us to emotionally flood. And when I say emotionally flood, it could take us into fight, flight, or freeze. To be able to attune, to be able to show empathy, we are unable to do that when we are mired and rooted in shame. And like I said earlier, shame is this deeply sensed belief that we are unacceptable. Okay, so let's pull that apart though. How does that manifest? There's two primary manifestations of shame: grandiosity and worthlessness. Unfortunately, if I'm honest, I fell into more of that grandiosity. I could walk into a room. If it was the gym, I'd be comparing myself against every other guy there, trying to figure out how I ranked and trying to help myself understand how I could one-up myself over everyone else. Either I'm doing pretty good for my age, or I'm smarter, or I'm stronger. It didn't matter. I was always trying to show myself or prove to myself because I had such a deep-seated, unknown belief that I was unacceptable. Image management, I think that's a huge component. I had people convinced that I was humble and a hard worker and a really nice guy. But if you'd get me at home, I was a pretty emotionally negligent parent and husband. I think shame could cause us to judge other people. We're looking at other people. And I think this kind of comes into trying to one-up ourselves. If we can judge other people, then we can feel good about ourselves. So the second component of shame and how it manifests is that worthlessness. We can feel like a victim. I think regardless of its worthlessness or grandiosity, we both can feel victimized or have this victim mentality. With the worthlessness, shame could cause us to go into isolation. We feel like we're so unacceptable that people don't want to be around us. We should go and just be alone, isolate. I think that's a huge component. And I think what's really interesting with shame too is I just noticed in my own recovery, as I became aware of the grandiosity and how significant that was a huge shakeup for me. And then shame changed the game on me. And then I would start struggling with that worthlessness. So I think shame could bounce back and forth between grandiosity and worthlessness. And I think shame will do its best to mess with you mentally. If you come from faith, I've heard people talk about like shame is like our enemy's primary target to take us out. So I hope this helps you understand at least an idea, or like starts to give you an idea of what shame looks like and how it's manifested.